On the evening of October 22, 2009, the peaceful confines of the quiet community of Snell Isle in St. Petersburg, Florida were suddenly shattered when Ben Cleveland, 33, a well-known local attorney, was found murdered in his home. The evidence quickly pointed to his wife, Francesca, igniting a scandal full of lies, love triangles, deceit, and secrets. Ben Cleveland's murder was complex. It exposed a tangled web of lies and deceit, revealing hidden motives. Detectives Dare McLaughlin and Sean Henley, who were assigned to the investigation, found themselves dealing with a case that was anything but simple. And in fact, the results of their investigation would lead them down a path that neither of them could have ever imagined. On the night of the murder, Francesca's scream shattered the quiet neighborhood. Frantically, she called 911 to report that she had found her husband lying dead in their living room. First responders arrived on the scene to find Francesca hysterical, her clothes stained with blood. She was crouched beside her husband Ben's body, which was lying on the floor of their living room. His throat had been viciously slashed, with blood soaking into the carpet. The chaotic scene showed signs of a violent struggle. When detectives McLaughlin and Henley arrived, they found Francesca sobbing uncontrollably, cradling the lifeless body of her husband in her arms. Scouring the crime scene, Detective McLaughlin noted the absence of forced entry, which suggested that Ben had known his attacker. McLaughlin's instinct told him that this was something more than a robbery or home invasion gone wrong. As the forensic team began their work, McLaughlin questioned Francesca. She said she had been out shopping and returned home to find Ben dead. As McLaughlin surveyed the scene, Detective Henley began to interview Ben and Francesca's neighbors. Several neighbors reported that they had heard some noises and shouting coming from the home earlier in the evening. They couldn't identify the voices or what was said, but it was clear that Ben wasn't alone before his death. McLaughlin and Henley agreed that the case was more complex than it seemed. The next day, the investigation began in earnest. The detectives' first step was to reconstruct a timeline of Ben's final hours on the day of his death. They found that Ben had left his office around 5 p.m., earlier than usual. His assistant said he seemed unusually tense and distracted that day. McLaughlin and Henley then explored Ben's professional life as a corporate lawyer. Ben was known as an up-and-coming attorney in his law firm, a rising star who had made a solid reputation as a brilliant and hardworking attorney. He was known for being driven and ambitious and had made some enemies along the way, and these would need to be investigated. However, after a thorough investigation, it became clear that his business associates had no involvement in the murder. The detectives next interviewed Ben's widow, Francesca Cleveland. Francesca claimed that after meeting friends for lunch, she had spent the afternoon shopping at the local mall, Tyrone Square, and returned home at 7 p.m., only to find her husband murdered. During the interview, McLaughlin and Henley noted Francesca's behavior as cooperative yet tense. Recounting that night, her voice was shaky, and her eyes filled with tears, but something seemed off about her story. Her behavior also raised suspicions. As Francesca recounted her day, she avoided eye contact and frequently glanced at her phone. Her account appeared rehearsed, almost staged. When the detectives followed up to confirm Francesca's story, they were able to verify her lunch with friends, but were unable to find any mall security camera footage to confirm her account of being at the mall. This prompted the detectives to take a closer look at Francesca Cleveland and her past. Francesca Cleveland, at 32, was a beautiful and alluring woman, a former model accustomed to being in the spotlight. She was also used to a life of privilege. Originally from Como province in the Lombardy region of northern Italy, near the Swiss border, she came from a wealthy family. At an early age, she pursued a career in modeling, and in 1995, at the age of 18, her career led her to come to the U.S. For a time, she briefly also tried her hand as an actress, however, with less success. By her mid-20s, as her modeling career began to fizzle out, she had married Mitchell Abbott, a successful Florida real estate developer. Her first marriage to Mitchell Abbott was passionate, but brief. The divorce had been bitter, with Mitchell blaming Francesca for the breakup of their marriage due to her infidelity and lavish spending habits. Yet despite the split, Mitchell still remained enamored with his ex-wife, claiming that he still loved her. Complicating matters, recently Mitchell and Francesca had appeared to have patched up their differences and had been seen together, although they claimed to be strictly friends. But Ben, her current husband, disliked Mitchell and had disapproved of the relationship. This tension hid deeper, darker connections that came to light later during the investigation. Taken altogether, these facts led detectives McLaughlin and Henley to take a closer look at Mitchell Abbott. When contacted by the detectives, Mitchell, who lived nearby in a condo in Clearwater, appeared genuinely shocked when informed of Ben's murder. He claimed to know nothing about the murder and said that he had been at home all that night alone. Mitchell's alibi was shaky, but there was no concrete evidence linking him to the crime. Detective McLaughlin decided to keep him under surveillance. Meanwhile, back at the station, Henley interviewed Cindy Cleveland, Ben's younger sister. Cindy, 25, always had a close relationship with both her brother and her sister-in-law, but lately there had been tensions. Cindy had been seen arguing with Ben days before the murder. Cindy, then a student at St. Petersburg College, was financially dependent on Ben, who supported his sister after the death of their parents in an unfortunate car accident several years earlier. Known to love clubbing and the nightlife, Cindy resented her financial dependence on Ben, who she claimed was too strict and controlling. During questioning, Cindy admitted they argued about money and that Ben had threatened to cut her off, but she denied killing him. Cindy's alibi for the night of the murder, however, also was weak. She claimed to have been out at a club all night, but no one could confirm her presence there. Francesca's suspicious behavior, Mitchell's shaky alibi, and Cindy's fractured relationship with her brother created a tangled web of confusion for detectives McLaughlin and Henley. They realized that there were layers of deceit and hidden motives that would need to be untangled if they were to solve Ben's murder. On the surface, Ben and Francesca Cleveland seemed like the perfect couple. They were attractive, popular, had a beautiful home, entertained lavishly, and had many friends in their community. But beneath the surface, there were cracks. Ben's success came at a price, and his hard-charging personality and demanding work schedule left little room for his marriage to Francesca. Ben entered Francesca's life soon after her divorce with Mitchell. His success offered stability and security to Francesca, whose modeling career had by now faded. They married within 3 months of meeting, but their whirlwind marriage proved to be disappointing to them both. Francesca missed the passion, excitement, and unpredictability of her life with Mitchell, while Ben grew increasingly disturbed by Francesca's lavish spending and the re-establishment of her relationship with Mitchell. Cindy Cleveland, Ben's younger sister, was another significant figure in the story. Known as the black sheep of the family, Cindy struggled with addictions and failed relationships while relying on Ben for financial support. This created a growing tension in their relationship, as both came to resent the other. Cindy and Francesca also had a complicated relationship. They appeared to be close, with an undeniable chemistry. Francesca confided in Cindy about her problems with Ben, while Cindy found sympathy and support in Francesca's company. As the investigation continued, the detectives found that Ben had recently made some significant financial moves. He had transferred substantial assets to help pay off some of Francesca's debts. Francesca's spending habits also raised suspicions. Her bank records showed large withdrawals and unexplained expenses. The detectives began to suspect that she was planning to leave Ben and start a new life. Mitchell, though seemingly out of the picture, still had feelings for Francesca. He had recently returned to town and met with her several times. Their interactions seemed friendly, but the detectives suspected that there may be more to their renewed relationship than just friendship. With each main player having both hidden and obvious reasons that could have driven them to kill Ben, the detectives focused on uncovering the possible motives behind Ben's murder. Francesca's financial troubles were glaring. Despite Ben's success, their finances were strained by Francesca's lavish lifestyle. A large life insurance policy that had been taken out on Ben by Francesca also added a sinister layer to this financial stress. As the beneficiary on the policy, Ben's death would effectively solve all of her money problems. Mitchell also had a motive. His lingering feelings for Francesca and jealousy of Ben created a volatile mix. His frequent visits to Francesca hinted at a rekindled relationship that could have turned into a conspiracy against Ben. Cindy's resentment towards Ben was well documented. She had always lived in Ben's shadow, relying on him for financial support. The argument they had days before the murder centered on money and control, with Ben threatening to cut Cindy off. This created a deep-seated resentment that could have driven Cindy to murder. Her ties with Francesca complicated matters further. Their relationship was a deeply emotional bond forged from mutual dissatisfaction and dependency. This caused the detectives to also consider the possibility of a joint effort between Francesca and Cindy to rid themselves of Ben in order to gain financial freedom. This scenario became more of a possibility when one evening, Detective McLaughlin received a call from Randy Evans. Evans was a bartender who worked at a local bar, who claimed to have seen Francesca and Cindy together the evening of the murder. According to Evans, They appear to be in an intense conversation, suggesting more than a casual encounter. This new information contradicted both Cindy's and Francesca's accounts of their whereabouts during the night of the murder. McLaughlin and Henley then brought Francesca and Cindy back in for further questioning. Confronted with the bartender's testimony, Francesca's composure began to crack. She admitted meeting Cindy but insisted they were discussing her troubled marriage and that the meeting had nothing to do with Ben's death. Cindy, on the other hand, was defensive and evasive when questioned about her whereabouts. The detectives pressed her on her relationship with Francesca and the nature of their conversation that night, but Cindy stuck to her story that it was an innocent encounter that had nothing to do with her brother's death. While Francesca and Cindy's conflicting accounts now made them prime suspects, Mitchell Abbott also remained a person of interest. His frequent visits to Francesca, their growing reconciliation, and Mitchell's contentious relationship with Ben made him a viable suspect. Hey, interested in more real-life murder mysteries? Be sure to like our content and subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories. Do you have any thoughts about this case or have a case of your own you'd like us to investigate? Leave us a comment. Until then, stay safe. A turning point in the investigation came when Detective Henley discovered a series of text messages between Francesca and Mitchell. The messages revealed their rekindled romantic relationship and plans to meet secretly. One message, sent by Francesca to Mitchell on the day of the murder, read, "We need to take care of things tonight. Ben can't find out." Armed with this new evidence, McLaughlin and Henley confronted Francesca and Mitchell separately. Under the detectives' continuing interrogation, Francesca broke down under pressure, confessing to the affair but denying any involvement in the murder. Mitchell, however, maintained his innocence, insisting that the messages were taken out of context. Another breakthrough in the case came when Detective McLaughlin examined phone records and financial transactions. He believed these would provide the concrete evidence needed to tie the suspects to the crime. The phone records revealed a flurry of calls and messages between Francesca, Cindy, and Mitchell in the days leading up to the murder. The communication patterns suggested a complex but coordinated effort with Francesca at the center. On the night of the murder, there were several calls between Francesca and Cindy, as well as a brief call from Francesca to Mitchell. While these communications placed all three suspects in contact during the critical hours before the murder, the communications themselves told separate stories entirely. Mitchell's involvement became clearer as the detectives reviewed his text messages. The messages clearly suggested that Mitchell was still in love with Francesca. Francesca, for her part, assured Mitchell on the night of the murder of her love and promised him that they could be together again once Mitchell would take care of Ben. This text message, coupled with others, suggested that Francesca was encouraging Mitchell to orchestrate Ben's murder. In contrast, the text messages between Francesca and Cindy revealed an intense and passionate relationship which centered around their mutual frustration with Ben and their dreams of living a life together free from his control. The messages between them, however, did not suggest that there was a plot between them to murder Ben. McLaughlin also discovered an unusual transaction in Francesca's bank account. A large sum of money had been transferred from Francesca and Ben's joint account to an offshore account held only in Francesca's name just days before Ben's death. This transaction, combined with a life insurance policy, suggested Francesca was preparing for a significant change in her life and her financial situation. But how are Cindy and Mitchell involved? Armed with this new evidence, the detectives decided to confront Cindy, Mitchell, and Francesca once more. This time, they presented them with the phone records and the financial transactions. Cindy was interviewed first. Faced with the evidence, Cindy's facade of innocence began to crumble. Under intensive questioning, she finally confessed to having an affair with Francesca. "I just couldn't take it anymore. Ben was so controlling. I didn't want things to come to this, but I just didn't have a choice. Francesca and I, we had a plan. We're in love. We were planning to leave Ben and start fresh, but I swear we never planned to kill him." Cindy admitted that she and Francesca had fallen in love and had planned to clean out Ben's bank account and run away together to the Cayman Islands. But she denied any involvement in Ben's death. Armed with Cindy's statement, the detectives next confronted Mitchell with their evidence. Confronted with irrefutable evidence of his involvement with Francesca, he broke down and confessed to attacking Ben. Mitchell explained that once he had resumed his relationship with Francesca, he had fallen hopelessly in love with her. Francesca had encouraged his advances and told him of her plans to leave Ben. She told Mitchell that her marriage to Ben had been a mistake and promised him that they would be together again once Ben was out of the picture. Together, they plotted to murder Ben and collect on his life insurance policy in order to resume their life together. On the night of the murder, under the pretense of wanting to meet with him, Francesca had called Ben to ask him to come home early that evening. Mitchell then used a key that Francesca had given him to enter the home she shared with Ben. He then waited for Ben to arrive and surprised him as he entered, attacking and killing him in a quick but bloody struggle. With these conflicting stories from Cindy and Mitchell, the detectives needed to hear from Francesca. When they brought her in for questioning, Francesca initially denied any involvement. But when confronted with the text messages, bank statements, and Cindy and Mitchell's confessions, her resolve rapidly crumbled. Francesca admitted to her affair with Cindy, but claimed that Cindy had nothing to do with Ben's murder. Under further questioning, she admitted that her affair with Mitchell was purely a sham. Francesca had planned to seduce Mitchell and then convince him that they would need to kill Ben in order to be together again. The detectives finally had all of the pieces they needed in order to put together the complex web of lies and deceit that led to Ben Cleveland's murder. Francesca and Cindy's relationship had developed into a passionate love affair. Together, they planned to empty out Ben's bank account in order to escape his control and start a new life together, free from his constraints and the judging eyes of polite society in St. Petersburg. But unbeknownst to Cindy, Francesca also had taken out a life insurance policy on Ben while she cultivated a renewal of her relationship with Mitchell. Francesca planned to use Mitchell in order to have him carry out Ben's murder, and then collect the proceeds of the life insurance policy in order to secure additional funds to support her new life with Cindy, while Mitchell would take the fall for the murder. With these confessions in hand, Detectives McLaughlin and Henley knew that they had uncovered the truth. The case was far from simple, but the tangled motives and relationships had finally come to light. The truth was a web of love, lies, betrayal, and desperation. On January 4, 2010, Francesca Cleveland and Mitchell Abbott appeared at the Pinellas County Courthouse in Clearwater, Florida, and pled guilty to the charge of first-degree murder. In exchange for their guilty pleas, the prospect of the death penalty was taken off the table, and they were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Francesca is currently serving her sentence at the Lowell Correctional Institution north of Ocala, while Mitchell is incarcerated at the Florida State Prison at Rayford, Florida. Cindy Cleveland, though initially suspected of complicity in the murder, was cleared by the investigation. Although she had planned to run away with Francesca, there was no evidence to show that she had any knowledge of Francesca's plot with Mitchell to murder Ben and collect on his life insurance. After the truth came to light, Cindy came to deeply regret her affair with Francesca. Guilt-stricken, she committed to change her life. Cindy went on to finish her education and eventually earned a master's degree in education from the University of South Florida. Today, she continues to reside in the St. Petersburg area, where she lives with her husband and 2 children and works as an educator. Following the arrest and conviction of Francesca Cleveland and Mitchell Abbott, Detectives McLaughlin and Henley were cited for their thorough work on the case. They continue their work for the St. Petersburg Police Department, where they are highly regarded for their investigative skills. The twisted love triangle that led to Ben Cleveland's murder had unraveled, but its impact will be felt for years to come. The truth, once uncovered, had brought justice, but it had also come at a terrible price, revealing the depths of human frailty and the devastating consequences of selfishness and unchecked desires.